My name is Vanessa Squires. I work with a company called Fizz. We do word of mouth marketing, and I'm on the marketing track lead team. This morning we have a panel discussion on SEO, and I'm just going to do a quick introduction for the panelists. Our moderator this morning is Jordan Silton. He's the Director and SEO and Analytics at Relevance Advisors. This is a boutique digital agency based in Atlanta, Georgia, specializing in search marketing. Jordan is an accomplished digital marketing professional who's crafted and executed search engine optimization and digital media strategies for clients like Apartment Finder, Alston Bird, AT&T U-verse, Atlanta Ballet, Ashton Woods Homes, Cartoon Network, Emory University, GameStop, Kimberly-Clark, Lowe, and NASCAR. Next up, we have Alicia Anderson. She is SEO manager at webmd.com. She's been in-house SEO since 2007 with particular emphasis on global brands. Prior to search, she was a data analyst before big data was a buzzword. And in her free time, she's a science fiction writer, which she claims uses a very similar skill set. Love that. We have Jenny Munn. Jenny is an SEO strategist who helps organizations get more leads from their website and integrate SEO in their marketing mix. She consults with in-house marketing managers, agencies, and small businesses. Jenny has taught SEO at WorldCamp Atlanta, Digital Atlanta, Solo PR Summit, Business Marketing Association, Atlanta Tech Village, and various content marketing and social media organizations. Nate Shiver. Excuse me. Nate's interest in content and SEO started in his previous position as a freelance consultant and then as senior SEO specialist at Nebo Agency. He maintains that he has embraced the bleeding edge of online marketing and leveraged the newest online tools to inform more traditional SEO and content campaigns throughout his career. Whenever he's found new opportunities, he's worked to share them with the community. He's written a range of posts on topics such as Reddit advertising and marketing and using Wikipedia for SEO. And finally, we have Stephanie Wallace. She is SEO director at Nebo and oversees the SEO department and is responsible for planning and implementing effective campaigns and being in the know on all trends in the space. She got hooked on digital marketing years ago while still at Georgia State University, where she graduated with a degree in marketing. Stephanie came to Nebo with a traditional marketing background, including experience both in-house and with brand management. She has a passion for all things digital and enjoys bringing marketing ideas to the online environment. So I'll turn it over to Jordan and we'll get started.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks for attending. And we have a number of different things we want to cover with the future of SEO, which I'm really looking forward to everybody's big, bold predictions at the end of this panel. So we'll get to that eventually. But let's start a little bit with where we are today and what the current state of SEO is. We're not in kind of old school SEO, we're talking more modern SEO. So let's start with Nate and we'll kind of work our way back. What is modern SEO? What does the landscape look like today?
I think, well, like you said, the days of old school SEO where you could take, a bunch of links that you built with keywords and stir them in a pot are gone. I think the role of modern SEO is really just being the advocate for people who are looking for your products and services. So making sure that they're finding what they're expecting, that their interests align with your brand, your product, and really being the advocate for making sure that your offline efforts or your off-page efforts, that your development team and your design team and your content team are all talking the same language and are all presenting, a united front.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it almost sounds cliche to say that SEO now is all about the user, because at its core, that's what it's always been about. But I think that we have hit a point where that really has to be your main focus, making sure that you have user-centered campaigns, like Nate said, that you are speaking to your target audience, providing the right information at the right time.
For me, modern SEO, can you guys hear me? Modern SEO, the definition of SEO, it's still making your content findable, and the practice of doing that hasn't changed. But for me, modern SEO, there's a few characteristics that do define it. One of them being that it has to be integrated. So, SEO can no longer be the person who sits in the corner desk and doesn't talk to anybody and just leaves at the end of the day. It's very integrated. You have to align it with all things digital. And Alicia and I were just talking, it's such a team approach. I'd say a huge 75% of what I do is understanding, okay, who's your PR person, who's your blogger, who's your social media person, who's the person who goes and speaks at events, where's your sales team, and teaching each of those people what their small contribution is that adds up to 80% of how you do SEO. So it's certainly a team approach. And then you really have to think post-click. So when you drive traffic to the site, everybody isn't ready to reach out yet. So you really have to have that funnel very clearly set up. So those are just a few things that I see that really distinguishes modern SEO from olden times.
From the content side, I always laugh that pairing up users' questions with our answers is what our job is, which is exactly what you guys are talking about. But I'm doing it from content instead of from selling, and so it's very different. The best practices approach, we have 1,000 people who touch the website and who can change the URL and create redirects. And so I have to create best practices across the board. This is what we were talking about earlier, where it is a team approach where everyone has to have that buy-in and understanding of where those intersections lie and how they impact traffic. And not only that, but I really feel like modern SEO has more to do with explaining and communicating those impacts in a way that makes sense. Like, we've always had to struggle with, like, okay, you need to set up your analytics and let's look at your clicks and let's look at your KPIs, but really more than that, we also have to be able to show that return on investment. We were talking earlier about how SEO is a year out or a year and a half out, and having that communication process that lasts a year and a half and is consistent for a year and a half is really freaking hard. And that's actually probably closer to what my experience of modern SEO is in terms of business communication, especially with larger businesses.
Sure. And so in order to build for a year out, a year and a half out, you have to be on top of what trends you're seeing right now, because you have to be able to predict what will work in a year and a half. You're seeing it on the big business side of things, Jenny. I think you have more experience on the small business side. What trends are you seeing in small businesses? How can you get them to kind of look ahead a year and a half? Or what are you looking at right now to help predict what you can help people with to help them sustain something in the long term?
Yeah, so I definitely do look at more the small to mid-sized business. And what I'm seeing is that and this is not a surprise, it's just so much harder than it used to be. So I have to really educate up front that this is going to take a while. There's a lot of moving parts, and I really have to discuss with them all the things that contribute to SEO. So we could do an awesome job at on-page, and we could still never rank because that off-page and those links and social media signals are just not there. So it really is that helping them look at that whole holistic strategy. And then again, the funnel, once you drive people to the site, they're not gonna magically reach out and convert into a lead automatically. So helping the small business understand their funnel also is really understanding the SERPs. So what I've been seeing is that when you do searches based on those core keywords, I see, LinkedIn Pulse articles come up, and LinkedIn Showcase pages, and Amazon product pages. And if you can never outseat those companies, then how can you be a part of them? So really educating about the SERPs these days and what can we realistically win on, and what are those short-term wins versus the long-term gain that's needed and their budgets.
Yeah, and Alicia, you're noticing some things that other industries don't necessarily get the privilege of seeing ahead of time, being in the medical space with WebMD. What are you seeing in search results? What are some changes that you're kind of looking forward to that might happen in other industries?
So at SMX Advanced earlier this year, one of the speakers said that Google has actually stated that their goal is to be like the Star Trek computer and to be able to answer a question when you ask.
Yes.
And the little answers box that pops up at the top of some of the data query kind of search, where you're doing a head query of some sort of like data question, like not looking for a company name or something, that little answers box is their first swag at that. Health searches are different because it is life and death. They are a little bit cognizant of the fact that they could be serving wrong information. They don't want to serve wrong information. So Google tries to kind of curate that information for their users a little bit better. So if you search for flu symptoms, they attempt to give you actual flu symptoms and not, something that's off base. The reason for that is because, and they actually do a lot more hand-holding in the health space than they do in a lot of other spaces. However, what I can tell you is that I watch the health space, and what happens there happens everywhere else 5 years later. So where I was seeing one boxes 3 years ago, everybody else is starting to see one boxes on random questions and informational questions all over the place now. So those little questions at the top, the way you get in there is bullet points, by the way, just so you know, takeaway. So answer the question with bullet points and you will get into the one box. You will jump, your link will be at number 3, you will be in number 1. Don't answer the question completely or else people won't click. Because if you show up in the one box, they get their answer. And so they don't click on that. But if you answer the question halfway, they will click because they need to know the rest of the question answer. The other thing that they're doing is the knowledge graph. And that's the big answers to health-related questions, that they're actually serving their own information. And this is Google as a data provider. This is actually Google providing their own article information, which is new and completely different from anything else that's going on the web. That's actually kind of the scariest thing. Because where else are they going to start providing their own information? Like, it's fine if they want to scrape like Wikipedia, because then they can just pull in that Wikipedia information. But this is them actually, they've used a lot of the information they had from the old Google Health, and they partnered with Mayo to get it medically up to date and to have doctors review it, because that's actually necessary, because things update over time. And then they created these things that are Google's information, and when you link through, it is actually their data, it's their article that they've provided. Up until this point, Google has not provided articles in the SERPs of their own information, and that's unusual and kind of scary, and I can actually see them doing that more across the knowledge graph.
Interesting. So, knowledge graph is obviously extremely important in the healthcare industry. Stephanie and Nate, you're seeing some things across multiple clients, variety of industries, publishing side, lead generation, e-commerce. What are you seeing that's working, not working right now?
In terms of the knowledge graph specifically?
Well, knowledge graph is one example that's key for healthcare. But what are you seeing in other industries that maybe used to work that no longer has any impact, or that you think is going to have an impact soon that might not be a ranking signal?
Yeah, well, one thing I know that is really impacting the e-commerce space is, going back to Jenny's point about how the SERPs are changing. If you notice that if you search for a product, just, garlic press, it used to be, that might be a really valuable term to rank for. But what you're seeing now is that for a lot of those big terms that previously you were focused on, it's all reviews pages, or it's all how to use pages, and even for moving down the funnel into brand terms. You might think that it would be great to rank for your brand term. Well, now everything is coupon results or promo results. So I think the challenge for e-commerce is, and even with the knowledge graph, is it's going to take a much more universal approach to content, to think about your full funnel, to think about providing content for how people are going to use your product. What information do they want on the product page? Are there any pieces of knowledge graph that you need to pull in? Are you providing reviews on the page, coupon codes? So I think dealing with the diversity of knowledge graph and changing SERPs is something that people who are, taking those changes into account, into their strategy, are having big success with, whereas the ones who aren't are falling off the radar.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that transcends beyond just e-commerce as well. I think for a lot of different verticals, you're seeing a lot more focus on not only review sites, but larger aggregator sites. So third-party retailers like Amazon for e-commerce, but also in the real estate industry, you're seeing more Trulia and Zillow. And so like Nate said, you really have to focus on more of the long tail and making sure that you're speaking to your audience throughout the entire buyer journey, so that you have top of mind, so that you are top of mind once they get further along in the funnel.
Thank you. So one thing that we were talking about earlier was there are some things you can do on a website that will make an impact right away. So you can do certain actions and you'll see traffic go up tomorrow or in 3 weeks or whenever Google crawls it and evaluates it. There are other things that will take years and years to see. Most of the sessions about what's going to happen in the long term. But could you each share a tip or something that you could do today that might make an impact tomorrow, even if it's on a very small scale? Yeah.
Yeah, well, still, you can't ever achieve SEO without doing the foundational basics. Optimizing your homepage title tag or adding a page. I used to call them outer space pages. They're not linked from anywhere else. What is the real term? Do you guys know the outer space pages?
I call them island pages.
Island pages. I think we all might call it something different, but adding them to the navigation or linking them to a parent page or a core page.
I call them orphans.
Orphans.
Yeah.
There you go.
I go
So your on-page foundational basics, and again, I can't tell you how many times I still see people who don't have a solid grasp of their keywords and the keywords that their target market is using, not the keywords they think or that they're trying to rank this creative term for, but really using actual keywords their target market is using and putting them on the page and not being spammy about it is still huge. So again, foundational basics can make a difference right away, but it's still just one part.
And more foundational basics, fix your 404s, make sure your page loads fast, make sure your mobile's friendly, make sure you have browser compatibility. All of those best practices, none of those have gone away.
So we're now starting to talk about user experience a lot. Nate, do you want to start talking about kind of how much does user experience matter for SEO? Maybe what signals can search engines look at? Just a little bit of where things are headed for user experience.
Well, I think what's happened is that user experience has become the wizard behind the curtain that's dictating everything else. So, for example, with site speed, with mobile, even if user experience isn't a direct ranking factor that people have reverse engineered, if someone clicks on your site and they bounce right back to the search results, that's something Google is going to see. If a journalist is looking for a website to link to, and your website just is impossible and ugly and they can't find what they're looking for, you're not going to get that link. And so I think user experience isn't so much a direct ranking factor, but it's something that it plays into everything else that matters with SEO, site speed, design. And so I think user experience has become integral to modern SEO.
Does anyone want to speak to maybe user experience on Google's search results page and what signals search engines might be able to use about what results are most popular or what would be clicked or how ranking might be impacted by user experience on Google?
Yeah, so Nate kind of touched on this, but pogo sticking is a big thing. When you click on whatever the first result is that you click on, if you go to that website and then immediately return to the Google search results page, that's something that registers with Google. They see that and they understand that you must not have found what you were looking for because you didn't spend very much time on the site. So they absolutely look at long clicks versus short clicks as a ranking factor. I also think that basic things like meta description, although it's not a direct ranking factor, we know that it impacts click-through rate. So making sure that you have optimized meta descriptions is another one of those fundamentals that can go a long way in improving click-through rate and making sure that that matches the content on the site and accurately describes that content to ensure that the user is finding what they expect when they click on your result.
The other thing is that right now Google's training users to do long tail searches. All of the Google Suggest that makes that head term 6 words longer, and all of those one boxes and all of those questions people might ask, those little horrible 4 sandwichy things that they're adding, which are all over health, by the way. All of those things are essentially Google attempting to train users to make a long tail search because they want the user to do one search and find one answer and find that question immediately. And they want to give them that question. But they know that the way for a user to do that is to search for something really long and specific. Users have been trained not to necessarily do that.
Isn't that the whole benefit of Google? You don't have to search in different ways and a variety of reasons.
But they're attempting to train users to do long tail searches. The thing that we're finding in the long tail side is that you have to make sure your title tags are optimized, that users know that what they're clicking on has that long tail search answer in it. And so that's when you're really doing some major long tail strategy to ensure that when they're doing that 7-word query, you really are answering that 7-word query.
Mm-hmm. And is that about getting the keywords on the page to exactly match that query, or are there other things that you want to think about when trying to match?
For me, it's
to the long
title,
tail?
tag, and meta description.
Still the basics.
Still the basics.
Awesome. So we talked about ranking factors. We talked about title tags, meta descriptions, H1 heading, keywords that are in content. We haven't mentioned local yet. How important is local to the future of SEO? Maybe local being important to mobile or to other things?
I'll just give a brief answer. I've really found the past few years that local really is its own niche and discipline within SEO. You have to do all the foundational items plus a whole other layer and a different strategy and approach. But everything from there used to be 7 results to now they've shortened it to 3 local results on a page. And I think I saw recently now they're testing sponsored local results on the page. But even thinking how we search local, I don't have to go to Google anymore. I can go right to my Starbucks app to find the Starbucks closest to me. So what a lot of people are seeing on local, it's actually kind of scary. Google is losing ground. I go to a private Facebook group. I go to East Cobb Moms and look for an electrician. Everybody's bypassing Google, and that's something Google is really trying to catch up to keep up with the way that people search locally, especially if you're on your phone. It's something to really pay attention to with the trends. And have you guys?
No, yeah, I think local is Google's Achilles heel because their local results are horrible. And every time they roll out an update, when they rolled out the pigeon update that they said this will solve all the problems, it made things worse. And so what's happening is that Google is outsourcing almost their local efforts. They're sending people to Yelp. They're sending people to Starbucks app. And so I think where that comes back in SEO is that, again, SEO isn't just about Google. It's about being where your users are searching. And if that means that, if the local SERPs for, your industry is 10 Yelp links, you should probably be on Yelp and not, focusing so much on Google, because that's going to bring you back to Google, so that you can create this full, I guess, ecosystem is the jargon in marketing, but to make sure that you're everywhere and where your customers are actually going and not solely focusing on Google.
Moz just released, relating to local, certain ranking factors that relate to it. We've seen a trend, and it's a lot less about getting your name, your address, your phone number correct across all of the different listings. And we're moving towards the gray area of, it's not really reviews, but it's kind of socially influenced metrics and kind of more touchy-feely types of things. If you want to rank locally, whether it be on Google, on Yelp, on yp.com, whatever the website, what things should you consider to make sure that you can rank highly or at least be in the mix when somebody's searching for your industry?
Yeah, I think local listings will always play a role in that, having consistent name, address, phone number across the major aggregators. But I also think that a large part of it is reviews. And that's not just to say generating positive reviews, because we all know that the people that leave reviews are the pissed off customers. So a big part of that is also being on top of responding to reviews. Responding to a negative review in a timely and appropriate manner where you're working to help the person and sympathetic can go a lot further than 10 positive reviews. So I think it's reviews are playing a bigger role, but not just in the sense that you need a lot of positive reviews.
Can I offer a tip? So I was working with a local private preschool in Kennesaw, this wonderful progressive school, and we were trying to help them rank better locally for Kennesaw and Smyrna and Ackworth type searches. And so again, quality backlinks from relevant other local places are really important along with the directory, the listings. But does anybody know who an industry is that links to schools? This is something really interesting we found by doing backlink analysis of their competitors. Does anybody have a guess who links to schools the most? I'm sorry?
Real estate?
That's exactly it. Real estate agents. One of the biggest things I saw that we were able to dive into was that real estate agents link to schools because they're trying to help new people to the area become acclimated if they want a private school versus a public one. And there was a huge opportunity there. So again, still being creative and not spammy and going after other relevant local places to get quality backlinks and genuine traffic is still really big, and that definitely did help.
How important are links to SEO? Are they still the most important factor?
Yeah, I mean, they're the factor. But I think we have to put a
That's
huge.
like asking if SEO is dead.
No, but I think the problem is that in our industry, you always have to put an asterisk beside it because, when you say links, if someone from 2005 says you need to get links, and someone from 2015 says you need to get links, well, we're both saying links, but we're saying something completely different. And so I'm going to go ahead and say the cliche that not every link is equal. In fact, some links are very, very bad. And so when we say links, we mean endorsements from other businesses, from other websites that you would want to have that in real life. So for example, a school, they would want a real estate agent to tell someone in person, hey, you should go check out this school. You should go check out this restaurant. So if you get a link from them, that's beneficial. I think in our industry, there's a lot of rules of thumb that people have come up with for what constitutes a good link or bad link. But I think good links, the links with asterisks, they're still the factor in every vertical.
And I asked the question, even though it's like saying it's SEO dead, in part because Moz just came out with a new study in partnership with BuzzSumo, and they were looking at how much do social shares, mentions, links in social interactions matter compared to actual real backlinks. And there was not a positive correlation found, which is surprising to a lot of things that we've said for a long time. So what should we do with social? If social links don't match actual, real, authoritative page rank passing, if that's the metric you want to use, links,
So
what should we do?
Prior to the Twitter fire hose coming back onto Google, and I haven't tested this since that happened, prior to that, a Twitter link, like even our own brand page sharing an article on Twitter, did show, like a news article, get a social bump and get listing in the SERPs faster than any other place. So Twitter was able to somehow surface a link to Google in a faster way and get it onto the page faster than just about any other way. It was very good for speed.
Yes.
Not for longevity and not for a long-lasting forever link signal. It was good for, hey, look at me. And then it just kind of went away. And so that's kind of where I see social signals. I see them as a, hey, look at me, and then they're brand halo and brand marketing, and they're part of that ecosystem that you guys are talking about, but they're not my link profile.
Very interesting. Do you agree?
Yeah, I was just to add to that, I think that the thing to remember is that you should be using social to help drive the conversation, but at the end of the day, that needs to end at your website. So it relates back to the fundamentals and making sure that everything is up to date and in line with best practices on your website.
Can I add something? Yeah, and a big part of both what they said, and a big part of what I see social too is just marketing 101 is getting more eyeballs on your content. It's promoting and distributing it, and really looking at the social channels again as their own search engine. So I got a lead the other day. Someone said, "Oh, I saw your article on LinkedIn," and then they came back to my site and then they reached out to me. So again, using social networks like another place to get your content discovered and to get more eyeballs and increase the chances of getting links and all the indirect. And again, Google Analytics can measure how much of your traffic comes from social and which social. And as we know from analytics, they're probably either taking that stuff into an account for or maybe against your site. So just it's so huge for multiple reasons.
The other thing is that a lot of content that does well on social does not necessarily do well on SEO, and vice versa. If it does well on both, it's kind of the golden egg. and that's the golden child that we all want. But honestly, when we're building content, we can kind of go, yeah, that's going to kill on Facebook and it's going to tank in search. And we know that going into it. It's a good thing to test that and to track that and to know what does really well in your different social markets. And then also, where is that golden egg? What is the golden child that's going to do really well in all of those places? And for us, it's questions. I don't know if you want to have another little fun nugget to take away. For us, it's questions. Anything that's like what do I do about blah, blah, blah? If you have a marketing thing that you're actually trying to sell something in e-commerce, what do I do about this thing that's not working? Or how do I use this in this way? Like that kind of question might do well in both ways, but it doesn't, I don't know, that's where our sweet spot is right now.
Yeah, I think it's figuring out who's going to share and who's going to link, because a lot of times those are they're related but different audiences. So, people who are interested in home and garden might share an article about, 10 tips or, a question like, what should I plant this year? But the thing that's going to get links that will get links is, say, a reference piece with, that's just going to have all the information, and it's going to be just as relevant this year as it will be next year, because that's going to be something that, journalists, bloggers, whoever, they're going to find, and they're going to say, this is the reference piece that you should use. But it's also going to be so boring that no one's really going to share it on Facebook, And so I think it's just keeping in mind when you're building the content, who's going to share it, who's going to link it, what's the goal of this piece?
Can you be both popular and authoritative?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's the golden egg. That if you can find that, if you can find the ultimate guide for whatever that has a unique mix that's both shareable and is something that people are going to link to, I think that's the golden that's the golden egg that we'll keep on giving years from now.
Excellent. So, one thing that we haven't talked too much about, we talked a little bit about people searching on their mobile phones using apps maybe as a replacement for Google or a substitute. I mean, one thing in e-commerce, we're seeing people go directly to Amazon to search for things as opposed to coming to Google first. A very large percentage of people are starting to do that now. How is Google trying to make the leap to mobile apps? I mean, obviously they're doing some connecting of the two, but how important is that for Google, and where do you think it's headed there?
It's not just Google. iOS is doing it as well. But what they're what they're trying to get us to do is app deep indexing. What they want us to do is that same kind of link structure that we're doing on our site that allow them to access and crawl and link through all of our sites through our apps. They want us to do that. Google wants to be able to do that through the Android thing. iOS wants to be able to do it through iOS. They want to be able to do that kind of app deep indexing. They keep saying there's an ROI.
Well, there are now 2 ranking boosts. There was one ranking boost for implementing app indexing at all, and now there's a second for using the new latest API standard.
Right. They're putting the carrot out there, but I don't see anybody biting it.
Yeah. Is that like the authorship carrot?
So, what are you guys seeing in terms of the chatter? Like, what do you think about app indexing?
I just know that there's, especially the past few weeks, so much information out there. The fight Facebook is coming to try to have their own, ecosystem within Facebook and make people never leave their Facebook app. So Facebook, Apple, and Google, there's just a huge war going on right now for attention on mobile. And I have no idea what's going to happen, but it'll be really interesting to see how that shakes out. That's definitely one of the big things that's coming with mobile.
Yeah, and I think it's, like most things, I think it's going to be sector specific. So different sectors are going to have higher ROI for being that early adopter, because I mean, if you're a company that has the developer resources, the know-how in-house, and let's say the travel industry where everything it's moving, it's all mobile, and it's right now, and you have the technical resources to do that. Being an early adopter, just like we saw with authorship, I mean, being an early adopter has a big payoff. You just have to be able to take the risk that this may not turn out to be as big of a deal as it, as Google says. Because again, Google is hanging the carrot out there, and you have to figure out, if you're B2B or people looking for you on apps, is that going to have as big of a payoff as doing a big investment in content? So, take it for what it's worth based on your resources.
And for everyone, is it not as big a deal, or potentially not as big a deal, because you don't think it will be a big ranking boost or ranking factor, or because you just don't think it's necessary at all? Because obviously connecting things together, I mean, that's, I think, where we're headed with Internet of Things.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that I can't project where it's going to go, and I cannot adequately explain to the business the benefit. So whether or not I'm future-proofing, and whether or not I think it's a viable or reasonable thing to do, it doesn't matter. I can't quantify it. So I believe that deep indexing into the symptom checker app makes a hell of a lot of sense. Like, it just does. Everybody has it. And having it come up in the SERPs makes sense. Of course, we have reference that comes up as well, so it would make sense to have those come up side by side. It would be fantastic. Dev resources are a question. There's a lot of questions there, but how do you quantify it? And how do you say, yeah, that's going to be a big deal, and it's going to be X% a big deal? Like, right now, it's Google's making promises.
Yeah. What other promises do you see Google making? What things are they trying to signal? What carrots are they trying to dangle that you think might be big or might not be big?
I mean, security, speed, and schema, I think, have been the three S's have been, Google has been saying, you should all go HTTPS, you should all speed up your sites, you should all implement schema. Now, if you implement all those in aggregate, those will probably have additional benefits. I mean, schema, schema is something that all search engines have agreed on, and if you can do it across your website, it's great to have it in place because you're going to have, basically a head start, especially with things like the knowledge graph. Same thing with HTTPS and site speed. It's very hard to quantify, if we spend X dollars implementing this, we're going to get X return. So, I think if you're in a business that can sell those things, you're also in the business that can sell app indexing and the other technical things that Google wants to have because it makes their lives easier. But it's, again, I think it's finding that balance within your sector.
But just like Rel Author and just like schema.org, they're selling it, but where's the actual payoff? We all know that Rel Author was like, yes, you need this and it's great and it's fantastic, and we embraced it because it was the whole idea of giving our authors our due. We do pay a lot to our writers, and we do really take value in our high quality content. It goes through 3 layers of editorial. So having Rel Author, and we were like, hey, maybe we can come up with a Rel editor. And so we really appreciated that signal, and the wax and wane of it and the fact that it never did a damn thing were kind of disappointing to us, because that's actually something where when you do quality content, it's a big deal. But schema, on the other hand, have any of you seen anything really come out of doing a schema implementation, aside from like rankings and reviews and star ratings?
No, I mean, stars. I mean, if you're in e-commerce, you get the stars, and it's, again, I mean, I think Dwayne Foster at Bing just yesterday again said, we want you to have schema. It makes their lives easier, and technically search engine optimization is about making search engines' job easier so that they reward you. So, and again, I think it's an investment. If you have a large site with a lot of structured data, I think you should go ahead and do it, just because there's other benefits because you have the structured data anyway. Same way with site speed is going to increase conversions, and security will increase conversion. If you can make a dual case, go ahead, but I still don't think the SEO reason only is there.
I have seen, though, with businesses that were really big into the structured markup around video, and when you would get your video snippet in the SERP, so you could you could have your YouTube, and then you could also have your page where your video was embedded, also with the snippet of the video. And although the image disappeared of your video, those pages are still ranking with the video, with the structured markup. So there's, a lot of people say do it because there's still the signal there and you're going to rank. You just won't get your video and you may not get as many clicks. So I still think, and all the experts are trying to push, all the Google people, still do your structured markup to help us understand what your data is about.
Well, and I would never say that page speed's a bad idea.
No, yeah. I'm saying, like, you make the dual case, like it's going to help your mobile user experience, and as a bonus, you may or may not get the rankings boost.
And so Google's doing a lot more PR recently around some of these algorithm updates. They did a huge thing around Mobilegeddon, even though they hate the word Mobilegeddon really passionately. So they've done that. They've done a ton around security. I mean, obviously they're trying to solve some issues that they have either in their search engine or with user behavior. So for mobile usability, speed is critical because people were getting to websites and they were going back to Google because even if the website had the content they wanted, it was coming back so slowly it wasn't usable. What other problems do you think Google has either in their algorithm or in the data set that they need to solve for that maybe we should be ahead of when we're looking forward to other things in SEO?
I just think one of the biggest things that Google is competing against right now is that a lot of people consider Google that extra step. So I was reading a good SEO article. It was called Stop Selling SEO Services. It was trying to be
SEO is
controversial, but then in the end it still said, we'll still sell SEO services, just make sure to educate. But it was saying how this guy was documenting the way his girlfriend had searched for furniture. So she completely bypassed searching on Google because it was an extra step. First she went to Pinterest to look for furniture for their new loft, and she wanted rustic style furniture, so she went to Pinterest, and then she started searching on eBay to try to get it cheaper, and then she went to Amazon. So she completely bypassed Google because it was an extra step. So I think Google understanding and trying to make up for how to remedy that extra step, and that's why they have Google Answers. And you guys are all seeing more Google providing the answer. You don't ever have to go to a website. All of that information you need is right there. Same with weather or travel information. So Google trying to eliminate that second step that nobody wants to do because we are all ADD online these days. I think that's a big challenge you're going to have to work out.
All right, so I want to leave some time for everyone to ask questions because I'm sure you have questions of your own. But before that, let's hear everyone's big, bold predictions. What's the big thing? What's going to happen in 5 years, or what do you know is going to happen, or see as a very likely probability in the future?
So the thing I'm watching is the fetch and render. I'm watching the way that they look at JavaScript and the way we're executing Java on the page and the way that they're looking at what actually happens on the page versus what we're saying in the source, and going toward reading what's going on in the dynamic Java world much more. I feel like Google's moving in that direction. They've already said that they are and that they're already looking at it, and you can tell in Webmaster Tools that they are because they can render the page for you. I think that that's going to get even deeper. And I think that that's going to become an even bigger part of our world. So
they announced yesterday that they can actually render your page for you.
Yes.
If they think you're having a slow experience. Is that
they've been doing, if you go into Webmaster Tools and do the fetch, the crawl is Google and the fetch and render, and you have a page with JavaScript enabled that looks different from what's in the source, it will actually render the JavaScript version. And they've been doing that for months, and it's really interesting. And you can also tell if you have a JavaScript pop-up that they're rendering the pop-up. And so that's actually their November 1st announcement. One of the other announcements that they had about mobile pop-ups that interrupt the user experience, that they're going to start dinging us for that. That is another one of those fetch and render things. And I think that that's just going to become, I think that's going to get much bigger.
Big bold predictions.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I don't really like this because for my clients, I tell them, stick to the course, stay with the strategy, just implement so we can finish this, execute this project, because what we're talking about, these trends, is there's a lot of shiny object syndrome right now, and it's easy to never complete anything or execute the strategy you do have in place. So this is hard for me because I don't let my businesses look to this stuff yet. But again, I just think that if your website is not going to rank on the first few pages of Google because it's all dominating, again, SEO, like our job really has to be to educate and understand where is your target market. Okay, this is not a big bold prediction at all. I guess just that your website, it might not rank. So people might not ever get to your website with SEO if you're a small to mid-sized business. So where else do you have to be? Whether it's putting up an Amazon storefront, whether it's having a bigger presence on LinkedIn or Pinterest, really understanding your market, because people might not ever get to your naked URL website anymore through core terms. So that's what I anticipate. You're really going to have to understand what other search engines you have to be and have a presence on.
Stephanie?
Yeah, kind of along those same lines, but I think that we're moving towards optimizing for more of a dual algorithm. So you'll have the one algorithm, which is traditional SEO on-page factors. You have to have the fundamentals in place like we've been talking about. But then there's this secondary algorithm that takes into account user experience and social and things like that. So I think and really the Internet of Things and optimizing outside of Google. So I think we're moving more and more towards this dual algorithm world.
Yeah, I think in the next 5 years that Google will maintain their search market share. There's no real challenger, but I think the problem is that in the next 5 years, when it comes to overall internet share of attention, Google is just going to be one player of many. I think the golden age of Google and SEO probably ended 2 years ago, and 5 years from now, there will be some industries that really don't care at all about Google. They're about Pinterest SEO or Amazon SEO, which I think is already happening. Yeah, and I'll go and make one other business prediction though. Sure. That because of that, Google is going to have to buy Twitter or some other unrelated platform and bring into their alphabet. The T in alphabet will be Twitter. And they may bring in a P for, they may bring in Pinterest, but Google's the whole idea of having one search box, you go there, you look, will be gone. And will be an idea that, we wondered, why were we so focused on Google in 2015?
Can I, make one
We
more?
have a follow-up, okay.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up. Is that one thing about this panel is it's so nice to elevate and change the conversation besides just, Panda and Penguin, and let's talk about how to stay ahead of the penalties. Like, we are beyond that now, and we all, if any of you guys are in SEO or digital space, really need to educate out there. Okay, we all know these best practices. We're beyond that. How can we talk about what's coming ahead and what are the other search engines, Amazon SEO, and all the other places to be on, because that's behind us, and we really need to start elevating that conversation to being about more than Google changes and algorithms and penalties and all that. We all know now, we're all on the same page. You have to do it the high quality way.
Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you spending the time and being here for a panelist. Can everyone thank our panelists real quickly? All right, so let's open it up to the audience. Who has some questions for an individual panelist or multiple? Yeah, Scott.
So one comment first from Nate's point. Schema for local, for your location and a good product base. It's beyond the stars, showing availability, showing pricing. That's akin to having your meta description legit. That's going to get you to click, and you can see double digit. And we have case studies for both of those for double digit.
So I have to repeat for the camera. So Schema is beyond the stars. You can get an additional benefit from having it.
For local.
For
local specifically.
Purposes and products, as well as
products.
that on video is still Wild West in terms of Schema. My question is, do you see this future prediction? Do you see mobile having its own index? To Stephanie's point about having this secondary index, see mobile being its own index in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you have to remember is that at the end of the day, Google's goal is to provide the user with the most relevant answer. So think about when you're searching on your phone. I have an Android, but when I'm searching on Google Now on my phone, they're providing results in-app that link me to another app or to another website directly, and I never even land on a Google search result page. So at the end of the day, that's costing them money, that's costing them page views, that's costing them ad clicks. So their end goal to provide me with the best result is costing them money. Mobile's absolutely going to have its own index and probably its own algorithm.
Will it look different than a traditional web index of we're going to crawl a page and cache it? So is the mobile index a different index, or is it the same type of index?
Well, so yesterday they put out the beta of AMP, and I don't know if any of you guys saw that. They had the link available on Search Engine Land, where they're trying to do this with news, and the SERPs do look different. And a lot of the news searches that I did were actually the carousel was all Twitter, which but some of the carousel could actually be, in some of the searches could actually be news articles. Like if you did like a today's news search or today's headline search, If you went through the AMP beta, you could actually see the difference in the SERPs. And there's a carousel of the biggest headlines with the New York Times and the blah, blah, blah. And that's actually, it's way faster. Like it's way crazy fast, and it's a much different experience, and it's mobile specific. And so yeah, I absolutely think that mobile is going to look different.
And it's very visual.
Yes.
It was visual. And copywriters, I think, are going to be more important than ever. So visual marketing, I think, is still really going to be the next frontier too, is how do you make your content in a different form to appeal to, no attention span.
And my take on that is the mobile index is more Google putting a skin on your content, not necessarily grabbing your website and rendering it as is. That might be what they're trying to do.
Well, and that's
there are
what
obviously
One Box
conflicts
is
in
as well.
there. Yeah, they're already doing it. Other questions? Yeah.
So looking at user experience, we were just talking about making things simpler. Is less more now when on websites and things like that? You want to get rid of some of the crazy JavaScripts and GIFs and things like that.
Yeah, is user experience, is it a less is more world?
It hurts my heart because I was a copywriter that people want to take away all their copy and make it so super minimal and small. I think people don't want less content, they want less clutter and less noise. So I think just really tightening everything up, but still getting good media information depending on, is the query transactional or informational? So again, you still really have to understand the page you want people to land on based on the search and mapping your keywords. But again, I do, you have to understand it depends on your niche. So people do want cleaner and less, but they want less crap, less clutter. So still, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that goes back into having good user experience, because if you look at a lot of sites, they find a balance between on the page being able to give the too long didn't read version at the top, and then for the users who want more, who want to scroll, you can provide that. The same way with on the technical side. I mean, you don't have to have a million pieces of JavaScript and random pieces of CSS everywhere. There's a way to build an elegant, beautiful site that has all the functionality. But again, that means working closely with your dev team. That means working closely with your design team, and not just putting more things on the page because Google needs more.
I'm going to play a devil's advocate and just kind of say test, 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 test. Test what your users really want, A/B test that to death, and then run a few tests about what the search engines really want. Because we've done some stuff with minimizing what's on the page and clearing up clutter and blah, blah, blah. And the thing is that some of that clutter is actually really freaking necessary. And, and so you have to know when you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And so yeah, definitely coordinating with design and UX and dev and all of that, absolutely, definitely also test the crap out of it as you're cleaning the house. I do think that less is more, and that you are moving toward a better UX and a cleaner design, but don't let design run that show. In terms of search, you're going to need to make sure that your stuff is still on the page. I'm going to give one really good example. Miley Ohai has said before, if you hide things behind a read more, that Google's going to deprioritize anything that's behind that read more. So if you've got one paragraph that's the too long didn't read, and then you've got the rest of that scroll behind a read more, the rest of that scroll is deprioritized as to content on your page in the SERPs, which is not good when you're optimizing content on your page in the SERPs. And so you have to really balance that out and really test it and watch your metrics.
Other question? Well, while you're all thinking, I have a follow-up question on that one. So one thing that you didn't really talk about was scripts on the page. So we now have really large JavaScript libraries. They can be a foundation, they can be a bootstrap, and then everyone's built all these plugins for them. So especially on an enterprise site, I don't know if it's WebMD or not. You look a little scared, so probably. You'll end up with 10 different plugins that apply to a JavaScript library, and that itself, loading those 10 or 11 different files, can take half a second. And if Google wants pages to come back in under a second, it's actually more than Google. User studies have indicated that users want web pages to come back in under a second, probably about a half a second. Is that going to be a huge barrier, or are there other things we need to focus on for speed?
It's definitely a consideration. I keep telling them to move away from JavaScript in general anyway, like just best practices wise. But it's such a crutch because it's so easy.
To CSS3 and HTML5?
Yes, absolutely. But it's such a crutch because it is easy and fast. And when you're low on dev resources, it's like, hey, we're just JavaScripted. And so it's one of those things that gets really frustrating because it does slow down the page so much.
Yeah, and it's hard to make that sell because Google has improved, or at least I've seen they've improved by leaps and bounds crawling JavaScript, and you can no longer pull the SEO card when it comes to JavaScript because Google can crawl it and index it, and so it's being able to make that case of do we go beyond what it works to is this ideal, will it generate the return that it will take to do it according to web standards, HTML5, CSS, all that.
Any other questions? Yes.
Alicia mentioned that Twitter will give you a quick hit. I wonder if all social media is equal in that. I seem to run across Pinterest links just constantly, but I search for images more than I do probably with text, and I'm always looking at Pinterest. Is Pinterest one of those that would give you more longevity in the SEO realm?
Will Pinterest give you more longevity in the SEO realm?
Have you guys studied this?
I was going to say that one, Google has access to Twitter's firehose. So if you want a news story, they're going to pull it out. One thing that Pinterest is doing really well, and Pinterest's engineering team actually published a giant case study on how they're doing SEO. So if you want to see SEO done at an enterprise level, Pinterest is the case study. So as far as getting a quick hit, I think Pinterest is the type of site, again, like Yelp, like a lot of the aggregator sites, where if you have a presence on Pinterest, because Pinterest does SEO so well, your content that is on Pinterest may have a better chance to rank in Google. So it's almost like you're piggybacking off Pinterest's amazing SEO efforts. You can do the same thing with Amazon or any of the other aggregator sites, but yeah, Pinterest is just, they're doing SEO really well.
They are, and it depends, for your market. Like I go right to Pinterest is my search engine for recipes and Halloween craft ideas for the kids, and I think Google is reflecting what is working, how big of a giant they are. So that's your industry. It's a really important place to be.
When they first came out, I did some studies against it, and basically what I found with them was that it wasn't a quick hit, but it was a long-term goal. It was a long-term gain. Originally, and I don't know if this has changed, and you guys might know, originally the Pinterest links were crawlable. All of the links on Pinterest were actually viable links.
They were.
Yeah, I don't know if they still are. But one of the problems with social media in a lot of the places like Facebook, Google can't actually see those links to crawl them and see them as backlinks, usually. So they're not really backlinks. They can see Twitter because Twitter's part of their little deal. They can see Pinterest if they can still crawl Pinterest. They can, of course, see Google+.
Facebook doesn't really want them in
But long term, I found that Pinterest had a long-term gain.
All right, well, we are right at kind of...
Sorry, can I just follow up on her?
Yeah.
Just to kind of touch on that.
Very quickly.
I work for a smaller business, mid-sized business, and with Pinterest, we saw in our analytics that, we had, do-it-yourself type stuff on our boards for green home solutions. And yes, we were getting a lot of clicks on our analytics, but they were national clicks, and we're not a national company. We're just in the Southeast. So Pinterest can't localize in that sense for Google, or Google can't when it comes to that Pinterest stuff, so you have to know your audience. So for us, Pinterest, yes, we were getting a lot of clicks, but they were from people in California that did us no good. So you can kind of look at that. Sorry.
That's actually a really good point, because Pinterest just made an announcement about that yesterday about localization, not with local cities in the US, but internationally. They're now starting to customize based on languages and what pins are important to people depending on their, larger region or nationality. So at that point, I have to say thank you to our panelists again. Thank you all for your questions and for coming. Please come stay for the next session, and our panelists will be here for a couple